The Republican health care plan is dead.
Now the president is pushing for senators to start from a clean slate.
The plan now, repeal now, and replace later.
You can't pass the gigantic bill. Tell me what you can pass, but get something done.
We will protect our workers, promote our industry, and be proud of our history because we will put America first.
The frantic search intensifying this morning for a missing father caught in a massive flash flood in Arizona.
Fox News confirming the former National Security Advisor Susan Rice is scheduled to appear before the Senate Intelligence Committee behind closed doors.
We have the right.
Thank you very much.
We're glad you're here, but now official Fox contributor. And all right, some breaking news happened last night. While the president had about 6 senators he was meeting with yesterday, word came out that he lost another 2, 4 overall. No reason for John McCain to rush back. The health care deal, as it looks, is dead in the Senate. Who's to blame?
Well, first, this is a dismal day for Republicans. This is an abandonment of the heart of what Republicans promised people for 8 years, and not to be able to deliver on it. This is the Senate's job. These senators needed to have looked each other in the eye and said it is our responsibility to figure out how to replace. And their failure should not go unnoted. It should be remembered in the polls because they promised us this. And I take these things seriously on core ideology. Look, I think it's the failure of the myriad of senators. I don't blame McConnell, and I certainly don't blame President Trump. President Trump tried. And you have to give credit to House Republicans for fulfilling their promise. Senate Republicans didn't.
Isn't it their responsibility, though, to also deliver a good bill, something that's affordable? Can't they start from a clean slate?
But look, this bill was an improvement. This bill did something that Republicans have been trying to do for decades, which was replace Medicaid as a huge open-ended federal entitlement and make it a more workable block grant that delivers better help for people on a state level. I remember in 1996 when Republicans in the Congress passed that to be vetoed by Bill Clinton. So this is a long-established Republican entitlement reform. At least one version of it repealed all the Obamacare tax hikes, which put a wet blanket on economic growth. And if you want to help people in this country who are struggling, grow the economy. The Obama years were lean 1% growth years, and that hurt more people in more ways.
But you know what, Ari, when people went to the polls in November, the battle cry was repeal and replace. This did not repeal. It still kept some taxes. It had a lot of regulations. Rand Paul said there was that great big insurance company subsidy slush fund thing.
Well, which is actually a tax break.
It was a flawed bill. And I think there are a lot of people who are probably going, good, let's not get that, because if premiums went down 12% in a year, would that have been worth all that we've gone through?
Well, if people could buy policies because their premiums went down, of course that's helpful. But the point is it returned it more to the free market. And there's nothing the federal government can do to cut it in half. I mean, it's too big an economy for the government to have that powerful a hand. But it was an improvement, and I didn't like the fact that they left those 2 tax hike provisions in there. But it still was an improvement over the status quo.
See, I don't have to explain this to you. You lived it. You have Rand Paul, extreme conservative / libertarian, Ted Cruz. I'm going to get my hands dirty, make this work somehow. And you got moderates like Senator Portman listened to his governor. And you have Senator Collins, who said, I got some huge blowback when I went back. So these people are being true to their school, just not true to their party, and maybe not true to their country. The president said before he knew that he had these 2 defectors, reported according to Politico, he goes, if the Senate Republicans don't get this thing done, they'll look like dopes. Do they look like dopes?
He's right. It's not a question of being true to your party or true to your country. It's a question of being true to your word. They should not have elevated the issue for 8 years among Republicans, saying, first thing we'll do is repeal and replace, if they weren't capable of doing it.
All right, well, let's focus on the positives. Moving forward, what happens next? I mean, we can all sit here and dwell on what went wrong, what they should have done, what they could have done. But honestly, like, it is what it is. It's already done. What can we do in the future, or what's it going to look like in the future?
Repeal, replace.
Will it happen? Will we get a brand new bill?
You know, in '96, it took 3 times for us to get that, and President Clinton then finally signed it once we took the Medicaid provision out. That led to welfare reform. So perhaps in the collapse of this, they'll come back to it at some point in this Congress. Certainly no time soon.
Not now.
No time soon. This Humpty Dumpty's ain't getting put together again now.
How do you feel about a quick replace vote that just takes it out.
Repeal vote, you mean?
Repeal vote, my bad. It just takes it out and says within 2 years we'll replace it with something. I think that's personally
That's
a
what they
disaster.
did. Isn't that what they did?
No, they're going to vote. They're going to vote to see if they're going to just get the repeal part out.
Here's the problem with that. It's not a full repeal because they're going to do it filibuster proof. They only want to do it with 50 votes. If you do it with 50 votes, you're repealing all the spending aspects of Obamacare, but you're leaving all the Obamacare rules in place because you need 60 votes to do that. So it's false advertising. It's not a full repeal if they do that.
Maybe it's time to nuclear options things. And people have been talking about it. And, you know, the president has even suggested nuclear option.
Everything.
In certain options.
Well, the nuclear option being 50 votes for everything?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm for that. I've long been for that. I was for that when President Obama was in office and the Senate was controlled by Democrats.
There's nothing in the Constitution that says it should be 60 votes.
The worst problem we have in Washington is that nothing ever gets done. And Republicans think we have solutions. Democrats think they have solutions. I'm for empowering people who are in power to get their job done. And that means 50 votes. But in this instance, Republicans can even muster the 50 votes on the repeal. And that's why I call it a dismal day for Republicans, because they gave the word and they didn't keep it.
Well, it sounds like Mitch McConnell is going to bring up this bill that passed the House in 2015 and passed the Senate in 2015 with 49 U.S. senators voting yes. So it would be hard for them to vote yes 2 years ago and no now.
And that's my point. That will be a partial repeal. That's only a repeal of the spending. It's not a repeal of the Obamacare rules. But here's the problem. If you actually did repeal Obamacare in its entirety for a future date with nothing to replace it, I think that's bad government. You should replace it. Republicans should be known for our ideas. They should be known how to improve the lives of people. And that's why they are sent to the Senate.
Help with some Democrats.
But Ari, the thing is, what you're saying is, if I'm an insurance CEO, if I'm in the pharmaceutical industry, all I know is I don't know what the future is. You talk about uncertainty. That's the definition of uncertainty. I'm repealing it. I'm not telling you what I'm replacing with. Go deal with it.
And Republicans do have to deal with the fact that Democrats legitimately changed the rules of the game about pre-existing conditions. We have accepted as a country that if you have a pre-existing condition, you shouldn't get turned down by an insurance company. And if you just flat out go back to status quo pre-Obamacare, you're allowing insurance companies to turn down people on the basis of pre-existing conditions. And I think that's cruel. And so that's why replace was so important, to get a new system that's more market-oriented that protected against insurance companies doing that.
You were a former press secretary, so we wanted to get your opinion about what ABC is doing now. We know that the press briefings at the White House, some of them are going to be televised, some are not, some are just audio only. What are your thoughts about ABC? They're having an online show now after all of the press briefings, so you can go online and watch it. If they happen to have one in the middle of the soap opera on ABC, you can go online and watch them talk about what we just heard.
Yeah, I think the ABC reporters are bored and they're looking for some airtime. You know, really, in the middle of the day like that, when you don't have a cable station attached to your network like ABC, those reporters don't have a place to get airtime. Or they can just watch Fox
News and actually see a show live on TV.
They could do that. But look, I'm for toning down Washington, D.C. Too much fighting, not enough getting done for the country, and part of that is why I'm supporting taking the briefing off of live TV.
Yeah, and Mike McCurry too, right?
Former Bill Clinton press secretary Mike McCurry argues the same thing. The briefing should be more of a serious briefing than a red-hot TV show. So ABC is now trying to come along and piggyback to get more web ratings. I mean, this is a web play. This is because really they don't have anything in the middle of the day. But I just think tone it all down, take the briefing off of live TV, let it be embargoed, so it's a piece of news that you use in the evening news. You use snippets later, but the show itself, the briefing itself, it's too red hot.
But Ari, let's talk about it. It is so argumentative, and it's tough being in the communication department with the president that sometimes shoots from the hip. I get that. But when you listen to Sean Spicer or Sanders, I also see the rudeness. I still hear, even though I don't see it, I still hear the rudeness and disdain they have for each other. It's unbelievable.
Well, and that's another reason I'm saying tone it down. I mean, the American people are sick of all the fighting. I mean, we've reached the point, all this, Russia, everything. The American people have gotten to the point, we've been there for years, we said, when you people in Washington get something done, wake me up. Until then, I am really tuning you out. And that's the problem we have in Washington. So I'm for doing things that takes that pressure away so the American people can actually learn to have faith in their government again. And all this clash gets in the way of people having better faith in the government.
Well, let's see what happens. All right, always a pleasure.
You toned us down. We were screaming before you got here. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We were. You just mellowed us out. Good job. Thanks, Ari.
Thanks, Ari.
You met Jillian, right?
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
behind you with some headlines.
Brian's telling the truth. I actually can't hear anything right now because they were screaming so loud.
Brian, why don't you scream her name?
Good morning to you. Let's get right to this. Extreme weather, the frantic search intensifying this morning for a missing father caught in a massive flash flood in Arizona. More cadaver dogs will be back on the scene to help look for Hector Garnica. His wife Maria, their 3 children, and 5 other family members did not survive. The youngest just 2 years old. Heavy rains triggering the flood, sending an avalanche of muddy water, rocks, and logs crashing down on the family. The schizophrenic drug dealer who admitted to murdering 4 young men now claiming he killed 2 other people. 20-year-old Cosmo DiNardo has already confessed to shooting the men and then burying their bodies on his family's Pennsylvania farm. Now DiNardo is reportedly telling police he killed 2 others when he was just 15 years old. You're looking at the 4 victims right now. Police are looking into those claims. President Trump's travel ban back in the hands of the Supreme Court this morning. The state of Hawaii has until today to respond to the motion filed by the White House blocking its latest ruling. The DOJ slamming a court for overstepping by allowing virtually all family members into the U.S. It comes as the Trump administration expands the list to include grandparents, as well as aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, and cousins. All right, so a 101-year-old woman shatters a 100-meter dash record, running it in just over 40 seconds. Julia Hurricane Hawkins making history for her age group during the USA Track and Field Outdoors Masters Championship.
I broke a record, and that was nice. I did it. I did it.
Wow. Hawkins credits healthy eating, exercising, and her family for the secret to living a long and prosperous life. And there's no surprise why she has the nickname Hurricane. Isn't that incredible?
That's awesome.
So cute.
Right.
I know. I love it. So much inspiration right there.
All right. Thank you, Jillian.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks, Jillian. 12 minutes now after the hour. Straight ahead on our show, she's a fugitive cop killer hiding out in Cuba. So why is she being honored by a women's group here in America?
Great question, Brian. Plus, Senator James Lankford had supper with the president last night at the White House to talk health care. So what's next for reform now that the bill that they had been thinking about is dead? He joins us live next. Repeal, then replace. President Trump urging U.S. senators to start on a new health care bill from a clean slate, hashing out that plan over dinner with a few selected senators invited to the White House last night. So what did they accomplish? Let's talk to Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. He was at the dinner where he is reporting that you had a delicious U.S. steak last night, right, sir?
We did have some American beef, I hope, from Oklahoma.
Okay, indeed. I was hoping for Kansas. So it looks like what had been on the agenda yesterday is now flamed out. Where do you go from here? Because it sounds like Mitch McConnell may bring up a 2015 bill that was passed in the Senate, passed by the House, wound up on President Obama's desk, and he never signed it.
Right. That was a little more of a repeal, but it wasn't total repeal either. Again, we're dealing with a budget bill here. It's called reconciliations. People get sick of hearing that term. But we don't have enough votes. We have to have 60 votes to be able to do a full repeal of Obamacare. So we're trying to deal with what can we get done and how far can we go to be able to protect people. Now, I don't want anyone to lose track of the fact this is something that has to be done. Just in my state in Oklahoma, insurance rates went up last year 76%. 76% in 1 year. We have thousands of people that used to have insurance that can no longer afford health care insurance anymore. We have some new people in the safety net, that's true, but we have thousands that used to have insurance and pay for it that no longer can. This has to be fixed.
Absolutely. The big question, Senator, is can the Republican Party, its many factions in the U.S. Senate, can you consolidate around any single idea and get that passed?
Yes. I'm still optimistic that we can, and because we must. This is not a this is kind of a no-fail moment that you have to be able to resolve all these issues. My focus for weeks has been let's get all the people that disagree in one room and let's hammer this all out at one moment. And for whatever reason, we've not been allowed to do that, to get all of the different factions into one room at one time. We've all been negotiating one at a time. If we can get everybody together at one time and finish this, I think we can get it done.
And last night when you were having dinner with the president and some other U.S. senators, this was not on your radar. You didn't realize that Jerry Moran and Mike Lee were no's, did you?
No, we did not know at that time. We were talking through kind of next step. We've got to be able to finish this. There are some things that still to be able to tweak out in this bill. And then we were talking about how to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. What do we do about buying insurance across state lines? Those are things that can't go in this bill because it's not budget related, but needs to be resolved.
All right, Senator, if you had to be a betting man, and I'm putting you on the spot right now on television, what do you think the Senate is going to wind up passing if you say you got to do something? All right, you do have to do something. Otherwise, you're going to get punished at the polls next time. What are we going to wind up with?
I think we'll wind up with a skinny down version of what we couldn't vote on this time, that there'll be a focus to say, okay, what can be eliminated from this, that people would say, we'll put that on the next bill, but we've got to be able to repeal as much as possible. My hope is we have to repeal as much as possible. We need to get started on replacement as soon as possible. There's no reason to start on some of it right now, and then to be able to move on it quickly.
All right. Well, you got a busy day. Senator, thank you very much for joining us today. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right. It's now 7:20 here in New York City. Still ahead, do you have student loan debt? Well, you may not have to pay up. We're going to tell you why coming up. And the Trump administration has new plans to build up the nation's cybersecurity. Our next guest calls cyber terrorism is the new suicide bomber. So what needs to be done now?
It is time now for your news by the numbers. First, 8%. That's how many Environmental Protection Agency employees will be laid off over the next 2 months. That's according to E&E News. The move, part of President Trump's budget plan to ramp up military spending and impose steep cuts on non-military agencies. Next, $225,000. That's nearly how much the National Institute of Health is spending on video games it aims to teach kids about clean water. And finally, $5 billion. That's how many student loans might be wiped clean because critical paperwork is missing, according to the New York Times. The troubled private loans are currently at the center of a legal dispute. Brian, down to you.
All right, thanks, Ainsley. Hey, the military is revamping its strategy to combat cyber attacks. The Trump administration finalizing plans to split Cyber Command from the NSA. So will this give us more a strategic advantage in cyberspace? Joining us right now, former Special Ops Intelligence Analyst Brett Velkovich, and he has got the best-selling book, Drone Warrior, an Elite Soldier's Inside Account of the Hunt for America's Most Dangerous Enemies. Brett, is this a good move?
I think it's a smart move by the administration, definitely. Look, the truth is we've been losing the cyber war, and it's not because of the lack of our capabilities. It's actually quite the contrary. We have far greater cyber capabilities than our adversaries ever do. But the fact of the matter is that the people that are behind these capabilities, they're hamstrung. They're hamstrung by red tape. And what this new move does is that it actually gives the military greater autonomy to conduct offensive actions against groups like ISIS, conduct attacks against their social networks, hit their financial institutions. And the NSA normally is in the business of collecting intelligence. And so within the intelligence community, there's this constant battle of when do we collect information versus when do we conduct an action. And this move will give the American military greater autonomy to actually conduct action against our enemies.
Brett, the way you understand it, will the NSA's collection ability act as a resource, or will they be walled off from each other?
They will act as a resource. The one thing that's important here is that they're not duplicating efforts. We really need the NSA to focus on these larger strategic issues like Iran, Russian meddling, China, and let the military get to do their job that they've been asked to by the American people, which is hunt down ISIS, degrade them to the ability that they can't conduct attacks against us.
Brett, I want to switch to another topic. I was really disturbed by the fact that as Mosul comes back and the Iraqis have been trained and our forces have given them great courage and the ability to and confidence, they've taken back their country. However, it seems as though Iran has got their tentacles everywhere. They bought off lawmakers. The products there are mostly Iranian made. They're using sections of Iran as a corridor into Syria. Can this be stopped, curtailed, ended?
Well, there's a bunch of different actions we could take against this. I mean, the problem is right now that we've got a war to win against ISIS. And the fact is the Iranian influence is a very significant issue. For years, for decades, the Iranians have exerted this political, military, and economic control over countries in the region, while we've really done their job for them and gone after these Sunni-backed groups like the Islamic State of Iraq. And all the while, the Iranians, they tend to think very long-term, and that's the danger of them. As a government, government, the Americans, we think 5 to 10 years out. How can we degrade ISIS? How can we stop these other attacks? The Iranians think centuries out. And so we have to, they're very dangerous when it comes to these nuclear agreements, especially, and this influence that they're exerting in the region. Now, there's a couple different things I think we can do against them. If we want to be more aggressive, we could actually look at, increasing our regional isolation of them by going after Iranian-backed militias, going after these groups in Syria and Yemen that the Iranians are providing support to. And at the same time, we could even designate the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization.
Right.
But the problem with that, again, is that it could potentially cause a destabilizing effect within the region that could work against us.
First off, we have to make sure that this Iraqi government has a deal with the Sunnis to let them have their own police force, or at least integrated with Shia. The thing that made Mosul ripe for overthrow was they fired all the Sunni law enforcement people and they brought in Shia, and they have no interest in being run by another section of the Muslim faith.
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the recent things that actually happened, though, was the parliament allowed Shia-backed militias to be officially a part of their government. It's a dangerous game they're playing there, and the Iranians know what they're doing. So we have to be very careful about this going forward.
Brett Velikovich, thanks so much. We covered a lot of ground, and hopefully we'll be smarter this time and leave some true presence there, and don't leave so the JV team doesn't go back in there and take portions of Iraq back. Thanks so much, Brett.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, coming up straight ahead, Al Gore calls global warming the most serious challenge facing our country right now. Really? But the American people just told him an inconvenient truth. And, sorry, Tom Perez, donations to the DNC just hit a record low. Eric Bolling here to discuss. Did he give to the DNC?
Here's something about Studio F, which is our new home. Downstairs, the shot you just saw a moment ago, is actually where they do the TV show The Specialist. So you're down in our basement, and we are up in your attic.
That's all up
We're
in our
the
attic.
crazies in the attic.
Yep. No, it's all bats. Bats in the attic?
Right,
No.
right.
It's all good.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're in the
down.
belfry.
I'm trying to figure out how we get some sound outside so people who are watching, even right now, they can hear what we're
That would be a
talking
great
about.
idea.
That
we
is
should
a
do
good
that.
idea.
I have it in my backyard now. I have speakers.
Can you hook it up here?
Right, I'm thinking about doing it. Or I could just, should I lend my speakers to the show?
You know what? We could probably do that, but somebody would probably steal them overnight. We'll figure it out. Eric Bolling, who's got the brand new New York Times best-selling book called The Swamp. Good to have you.
You know, honestly, this whole healthcare debate really we talk a little bit about
what's going on.
Swamp. Yeah, because here's what's happened. So for 7 years, Republicans have had an opportunity to come up with the replacement bill. They've talked about repeal and replace. You guys have been talking about it all morning perfectly, and they came up with nothing. But what they came up with was something that looked a lot like Obamacare. Now, I point out in the book that the swamp isn't just Democrats. There are Republicans in the swamp. A little story. For a long time, I've been against this new bill that the House members first put together, and now the Senate put together. It didn't feel right. It didn't hit the things that were important to us as Republicans, as conservatives for the past 7 years. It didn't talk about competition across state lines. It didn't talk about bringing drug prices home. Why is it cheaper to buy the same drug that's manufactured here in the United States? It's cheaper to buy it in Canada. It didn't affect that. It didn't talk about competition between hospitals. Hospitals could post prices online of what they charge for a procedure or a drug and compete that way. It didn't bring the cost of health care down. It just attacked the cost of health insurance, and the only way they attacked it was by adding subsidies to it. So since day one, I've been against the bill. But my question is, why is that? The only thing I can come up with is because the most powerful lobby in D.C. is the drug lobby, is the pharmaceutical lobby, are the insurers' lobbies. They're massive. There's hundreds of billions of dollars, literally hundreds of billions of dollars.
They help write these bills.
Of course. And so while the Republicans over the last 7 years are putting together ideas and putting the bill together, you think they're not being wined and dined by these groups saying, hey, you know, we kind of like that little provision that was in Obamacare. We want to change, and we know you have to do it, but you know, maybe you just step away from that. So the things that we've talked, tort reform, We've talked about tort reform for 7 years. It wasn't in Obamacare. It's not in this bill either. We really need to go back to the drawing board, and if that means taking it on the chin for a while politically, I think you have to do that. So there's politics and policy. The policy stinks. You're going to have to work around the politics.
Just so you know, what you're describing would need 60 votes. And the Republicans don't even agree on a lot of things that you just said.
Unless you go nuclear, which you guys talked about with Ari Fleischer a minute ago, who he agrees with. Maybe it's time. I think you think it's a good idea,
but Susan Collins doesn't want that. I mean, she does not want that. I don't think Senator Portman wants it either. I don't think a lot of Republican governors want the things that you say the swamp is preventing from happening. So let me ask you this, Brian.
So you go into, and I'm not saying
these are
you're in favor.
I'm just saying Republicans versus Republicans.
So just let's just say they do go ahead and somehow figure out a way to pass this bill, right? Premiums, CBO has already told us, premiums are going to rise for people over 50, low income, going through 2018, the election.
And then come down.
And then come down, yeah. But how in the world are you going to go to the voting booth in 2018 and hold the House, which you need to hold, with premiums rising higher than Obamacare?
It doesn't look like this bill. This thing's out. It's dead.
Good.
Because they're saying they're going to repeal it. The question is, do they repeal just itsy bitsy pieces of it? Because then you only need the 50 votes if it affects revenue. You need 60 votes to repeal the entire thing.
They said the Republicans will look like dopes if they don't pass
it.
They do.
They already look like dopes.
You know who looks like a good move? But you said it's a good move.
But it's the only move. I didn't say it was a good move. It's their only
if it's
option.
A bad bill, kill it.
It's better than the alternative of passing a bill that's going to ruin the lives of Americans, and they're going to say, "I'm done with your Republican Party."
It was better than Obamacare.
A little.
Well, I don't know if it is.
It was better than Obamacare.
That's because you think that everything they promise on the backside of this bill or law is going to actually come
Bottom line is,
conservative, and he's going to have a lot of rules.
Republicans, Eric, have a lot of pressure on them because if they get it wrong, then they're going to get accused of the same thing that Obamacare did.
People have very, very short memories. Let's just say this thing fails. They put it off to the side. They say we're going to do what we have to do to shore up the individual insurance markets. It's going to cost money. Yep, it's going to cost us money because they screwed up. They failed. You shore up the individual insurance markets, you put it off to the side, then you take up something that I think every single American, whether you're Democrat, Independent, or Republican, can wrap their brain around: tax reform.
Of course.
Your tax bill is going to go down. We are watching this, doesn't matter who you are, you're watching TV right now, your tax bill is going to go down. Corporate taxes are going to go down, bring us more in line, and off to the races. Things get better. Tax reform is a Republican, strong pat on the back. You couple that with infrastructure, you're going into 2018 election with a little bit of bipartisan support with your.
But you know what, Eric?
And then you have time to work on health care.
Americans have short memories. You're absolutely right. But they do remember. They will remember until next time they vote that if they elected a party to go to Washington, D.C. and do something, okay, we're going to repeal it, and then we're going to replace it, and they didn't really repeal it.
Okay, so at some point
it's going to be hell to pay.
Yeah, of course it's going to be hell to pay. But guess what? That's the cost of promising something you couldn't deliver on. I mean, you really. The alternative is putting up something that's worse, or perceived to be worse, or more expensive. And Brian, I get you down the road. You got to say, "Hey, I hope down the road these premiums are going to go down." But that's what the Democrats told us too.
We're going to be talking about it all day. I know you're going to be talking about it tonight.
Yep.
This is his book. It's called The Swamp. Everyone in America loves it because second week in a row on New York Times bestseller list.
After I showed up here on the day we debuted.
Yeah.
We showed up here. We talked about the book and went off to the races.
And then where'd you go after?
I went to the specialist.
No, keep going.
Well, I don't remember where I go. The radio Kill Me radio show. You know what? I think it was the Kill Me radio audience that actually made that book number 2 on the New York Times.
It was, it had nothing to do with the president's tweet about it. It had everything to do with Brian's show.
He has a lot of followers.
Can we just point something out? On the GOP side, when the GOP put the health care bill together, it was leadership that put together that bill. It wasn't President Trump. On the Senate side, it wasn't President Trump's health care bill. These are leadership responsibilities. They got to get their act together.
And my leadership says we should toss to Jillian.
Gotcha.
Right.
Eric,
thank you very much. We'll see you in a few
back
hours.
to the basement.
Eric, you're not going to toss to me?
Jillian, over to Jillian with the headline.
Thank you very much. Let's get you caught up on what you need to know. Remember when Susan Rice lied about her alleged unmasking?
I know nothing about this. Absolutely not for any political purposes, to spy, expose anything.
This week, the former national security advisor will face questions about it on Capitol Hill. But Rice's testimony before the House Intelligence Committee will be behind closed doors. Fox News contributor Judge Andrew Napolitano doesn't agree with that move. He told us earlier the American people have the right to know.
We have the right to know what she knows, what she did. We have the right to know what Congress knows, and we have the right to know what the heck Congress is going to do about it.
The testimony comes as we learn more than a half a dozen senior Obama officials are reportedly also of interest in the unmasking investigation. A Women's March organization under fire for honoring a cop killer. The organization tweeting this birthday greeting to Joanne Chesimard, who now calls herself Assata Shakur, a terrorist on the FBI's most wanted list. She fled to Cuba after escaping a New Jersey prison in 1977. She was serving a life sentence for her role in the murder of a New Jersey state trooper. Former Vice President Al Gore calling climate change a really important issue.
We've never had a president who's deliberately made decisions, the effect of which is to tear down America's standing in the world. The climate crisis is by far the most serious challenge we face.
But a new poll shows that 90% of Americans disagree. Just 1 in 10 Americans saying global warming is the most important issue facing the U.S. That's a quick look at your headlines on this Tuesday morning. I will send it back to you guys.
All right. He's one of his quotes was, "Every day I look at the weather report, it's like the book of Revelations."
Oh,
no, it isn't. The weather changes. We have clouds and we have sun. Thank you.
And we have rain.
Good point.
Thank you very much. Who needs Al Roker when we got Brian doing the weather?
It's not the book of Revelation. Sometimes it's windy.
All right, moving on is the incredible video that has gone viral. A dog swimming into a lake and rescuing a baby deer. That dog and his owner are going to join us live.
This is real, right?
Sound.
Yes.
And this picture also viral. Pastors praying with the president in the Oval Office, but the left is crying foul. Really?
That borders on heresy. When you can pray for a president and others while they are prey preying on the most vulnerable. It is a form of theological malpractice that borders on heresy. When you can pray for a president and others while they are prey preying on the most vulnerable, you are violating the most sacred principles of religion.
Hatred for President Trump reaching a new low after this picture of evangelical pastors praying with our president in the Oval Office goes viral. Well, here to weigh in on this is host of The Blaze TV, Lawrence Jones. Hey, Lawrence, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. All right, so we just watched Reverend William Barber, who is with the NAACP. He is the president of one of the branches, right?
Right, North Carolina.
Okay, so he was just saying basically that the president, and correct me if I'm wrong, is he saying the president is so bad that we shouldn't be praying for him because he's praying, P-R-E-Y, praying on poor people?
Right. Not just poor people, but the whole President Trump's agenda. He doesn't feel like preachers should be in the White House praying for the president because of that.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's anti-scripture. I mean, has he read 1 Timothy 2, where it encourages us to pray for our leaders? Listen, I disagree with pretty much everything President Obama did, but I say the same prayer I said for him, for President Trump. I pray for wisdom, a hedge of protection over his life and his family's life, that God puts an agenda that advocates for the American people. No matter what president is in office, I think they all need prayer. I think that's what's part of the problem with this nation right now, that we've turned away from God, and as a result we have a lot of tragedies happening across this country. So for a preacher, a minister, to say this, I think is a poor example of what the gospel actually represents. We're supposed to pray for our enemies as well.
Right. I wonder what it would be like if President Obama were in the White House still.